At that time, it was very normal, in fact, to have communions between humanoids and extraterrestrials, between races. And these portals and these tombs, as we could also call them, also serve the purpose of connecting on high, long distances, because it served the purpose of opening the third eye. Alright, we've just been inside the Newgrange mound.
Still pretty toasted.
Yeah, that was very special. We were not allowed to make any videos or pictures.
300,000 bulbs inside. It was really like...
It's 3,200 years before Christ, so really more than 5,000 years old. Yes, massive place, high energies. And Star just said there is quite some beings still that want to say hello. So let's see who's gonna come.
Amazing faculties here.
Sua.
It's the elders of the Galactic Council.
Sua.
So greeting.
Here we gladly retrieve ourselves again. The elders of the Galactic Council are, of course, present when you enter a big prehistoric tomb like this. We have had many of those artifacts back in the times when the floods had not yet come. However, after the floods had come, many of those specific tombstones and entombed areas have been vanished away with the watery realms. This is why we are extremely grateful that this particular passage tomb is still so well preserved and has been intacted once again. We are grateful for many of you kind dear humanoids who can go inside these tombs these days and have a sense of it, what it was like back in the eras where there was not so much discussion yet. Is humanity the only race on Earth? At that time, it was very normal, in fact, to have communions between humanoids and extraterrestrials, between races. Many of those races in that time and area and epoch were communicating on a daily basis, but they did not always use normal ways of speaking. What did they use? They used sometimes mounds like these and certain spirals of cloudinesses that came from inside. This is where those mounds were also used for. They were on very high pristine areas and they were able to connect the dots between them. This is how the extraterrestrials launched certain informations downward and how they got spread over the lands. It does not mean to say that there were not craft landing in any of those spots, but certain information could blend in fairly swiftly because certain ways of communicating with smoke and other types of portalized visions like telepathy and other constructs of exquisite things of communication were at the time very prevalent. It was very easy for tribes at that time to go in an enclosed environment. It may have been fairly dark, not fully dark all the time, but the third eyes were opening very easily. In case many of those tribes were sitting inside Gaia like this, opening their third eyes, they had rituals that they could exchange amongst each other. If one of the tribes received information from a star member or from any other of the members of the cosmos of the giant race, then it could easily be also transmuted to other particles and not particles to other parts of this globe where similar tribes were sitting deep inside the dark trying to connect with the ancestors and trying to connect with the stellar systems. These portals and these tombs, as we could also call them, also served the purpose of connecting on high, long distances, because it served the purpose of opening the third eye. The third eye opens very easily when one is pitched close by into the dark. This is why many of those tombs really could go into a very, very deep dark place for quite a long period of time. Every time that you wonder, were there really no rays of light possible to enter these structures, as we could call them? The answer is no. There was always light that could be pitched in if it had to occur. In case it was not needed, several stones and other granite structures were exactly placed to cover any possible lids where light could still minusculously enter into those tomb passages, so that there was a very full amount of pitch black system. When there were a few people sitting opposite one another, there is an east-west, there is a north-south. Sometimes there was one person, the main shaman or the main witch of the tribe, you could say, sitting into the middle. Sometimes it was a somewhat larger structure or a larger being standing in the middle. There was a circuitry of energy that immediately started to vortexify fields of energy. This is how much of the information that had landed from the stars on this globe was transported to other communities that had similar mounds like these, and they all started to synchronize the information together. This is why in many parts of the world similar symbols are found, similar constructs are found, similar of those geographically exactly placed, situated, east, north faced, etc. structures, not just pyramids, many other temples and structures, as we could call them in general. They have been laid out in certain exquisitized geometrical shaping. This is because there was an alignment taking place. Many of the people at the time could still very easily connect through the third eye. They got many images and visions, and they scrolled them into the rock. They often even did this when it was pitch black, so they could really clearly envision what the symbol was that came to them, and then they pitched it in. Sometimes it took hours, sometimes it took weeks, sometimes it took decades to completely make one graphic. It is important to realize that many of the stones that have been excavated, not excavated but placed and found on the outside, have also been carved on the inside when it was black and dark. Many of those stones have first been transported in, then transported out, so the real imagery, the real art of the rock could come to the visionaries and the seers very clearly. It came to them almost in dream time, but it was a very awakened dream time. The more you can realize this, that our ancestors and ancient ones already were very well connected with everything outside of themselves, the more you will also find this feeling once you go inside a tomb like Newgrange. It is not just a passage tomb, it is not just a place for ritual, it was a place where earth and stars connected, where many of the realms could communicate together, because it could get very dark in there. Cemeteries have been built over time, where many more larger tombs have been added to the soil. This was not occurring in these tombs. There must have been smaller urns, you could call them. Sometimes there was not even an urn. It was just placed in one big offering schale, in one big word lacking. It was like a bowl is the word we were looking for. Every time that somebody had to be cremated, it could take place in one of those offering burial bowls. Every time someone else was added to it. This also helped for the beings who were housing there to really serve on their ancestors. Like the ancestors were mixed with the new ones to come, they were sometimes gathered in larger heaps and staples, so to say. They were not kept separate all the time. They were mixing in, so the density particles of the bodies were always blending together again. The ancestors, the new offsprings. They were not to be kept separate. They were to be exchanging information. This is what these tombs were about. They were to connect deep, deep, deep on the inside, and from there travel outwards. The ancestors have always been in love with these places, and they will not leave them. Many of the extraterrestrials and also the massive giant race is still very active in places like this. We as elders from this council would like to let you know, every time that you visit a place like that, sense into your field, what does it do for me? Do I have a remembrance? Do I get a visual at night? Possibly one of the spiral symbols or any other of the dotted curved symbols that you have seen and sensed. It may speak to one of your past lifetimes where you have been meeting them and being one of the ancestors that we are currently speaking about. The elders would like to compliment you both for really being very present when you went into the chamber. It's a very, very sacred space, and it's still kept very clean on a daily basis. The giants are really swiping out all the humanoid energies at the beginning and at the end of the day, so the place stays energetically as pristine as possible. They are still the gatekeepers to Newgrange and Doubt, even though Doubt might not be visited by humans so often. Also there, regular cleanings are taking place, so the etheric structures remain into place. We are very grateful to the ones who not founded these structures, but really recognized their value and brought them back to the public once again, so the public can start to wonder and think and sense what has really occurred here so many thousands of years ago. It might remain a puzzling feeling what really, really occurred. We can only share this with you. It was not just humanity that built these structures. We greet you for now.
Thank you so much. Yeah, the energy was extremely strong. I felt it. I became even a bit dizzy. And we've been told by the mentors that there are much more structures also below these levels. Does it make sense to share that with the researchers that are researching these sites? Is it time to let that know?
Here we speak once again. The elders of this Galactic Council are very well aware that there is many of those types of structures, especially on naturally occurring hills. The hilltops always had to be connected, so communication could go in a physical way, in a teleported way. It is very important to understand that many of these hills in the landscape have shifted over time. This is natural over eons of time. This is why many of those types of mounds and structures are currently shifted like this. They are tilted, they are no longer really actively used. Some of them are still being cleared out by the giants, by other beings, the caretakers of the burial places, but some of them are really not easy to be localized any longer. We understand your curiosity and your wish to bring more of this information to the public. However, we feel it is not needed right now to speak about this. When the moment really comes to the surface, it will get recognized. There might be farmers digging somewhere else in a corner of their land, and all of a sudden they tilt onto something. It is important to just always keep your heart and your ears and eyes open to any possibility that there might be something hiding, so to say, in any landscape, even in the bottoms of the seas and the oceans. Many structures and ancient artifacts have not been found. Some of them might never ever be localized, but their energy still beams, and this is what is important in these times of ascension. Humanity senses something is drizzling upwards, something is tickling on their chest to awaken to something new, something ancient that actually has always been hiding in the humanoid heart. The humanoid heart is awakening and ascending, and many more of those structures might fall into place in the years to come. Maybe in this country, maybe in another one, maybe overseas, maybe underneath the water surface. It is just important to let everybody know we have only found possibly the tip of the iceberg. There is so much more that Earth is still housing. Many eyes are often localized towards the star, and more the eyes of humanity are starting to dig into the Earth and trying to find what is its surface soil field still hiding and keeping in treasure for us. There will come more artifacts in the next decades to come, exactly pointedly timed in the exact moment for the divine assembly to take place. Many of those burial monuments have served many different purposes that are being discussed on a daily basis by researchers and different teams of archaeologists, because they only limit their views to a third dimensional vision. As soon as the vision of humanity starts to ascend and awaken and widen, which is occurring naturally on a daily basis, multiple options will start to come to them, and in these moments also new diggings will start to take place, and they come to fruition, and they will be looked at with new eyesightings. The elders of this council greet you, and we want to thank you for keeping your eyes and ears, and mostly your heart, open to all that is. We greet you for now.
Yes, was wonderful.
Sua sua nyata.
Was wonderful.
Sua sua.
Sua sua.
Sua sua.
Strong. Yes.
Also interesting. The third eye.